Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Caden Cleveland here with the Oklahoma Senate, and you're joining us for another episode of OK Senate on Deck. Of course, we're joined with our President Pro Tem of the Senate, Senator Greg Treat. Senator, welcome, and thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah, look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So just to not waste any time, to dive right in, we just concluded, we're going into the fourth week of session.
Deadline week.
That's right, deadline week. But before we get to what's going to be happening this week, let's talk a little bit about what all went on last week, because there was a lot of legislation that got moved through the Senate and through the House, and I really just want to get your take on them. So
yeah, a very busy week. We haven't started off at a slow pace. We've started at full speed, both the House and the Senate. Mm-hmm. So the Senate, we were able to pass the 5-day school week, part of our agenda this past week, and then this upcoming week, we're going to be looking at government accountability. We're going to be looking at other parts of our platform. Mm-hmm. The House last week passed a teacher pay raise, and I'm the Senate author on that. Okay. The House had sent us earlier constitutional carry, which we were enthusiastically in favor of, and so the Appropriations Committee this past week took it up and passed it overwhelmingly, even had a bipartisan vote on it.
Awesome. So is that looking like it'll be moved to the floor here pretty soon, you think?
The first day it would be eligible to be heard on the floor is this Tuesday, but not sure. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but it will be handled expeditiously.
Gotcha. Okay. So backtracking just a little bit, I want to ask you a question, because there's been a lot of feedback and I think maybe misunderstanding on Senate Bill 441, which is authored by Senator Quinn, and it's the 5-day school week bill that you had mentioned. Questions on that we've been receiving is this thing going to diminish local control of school districts, and is this going to mandate that all schools go to 5 days? So the bill actually mentions some exemptions. Can you kind of walk us through what those look like?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's one of the central planks of the 4-point agenda of the Senate Republicans this year, and that Senate Bill 441 is the bill that encompasses our agenda item. I'm excited that Senator Quinn took it on. But there's a lot of confusion on it. Local control is something that we as Republicans in my caucus have been very adamant about. Right. And this bill is in line with that. So what it says is that 5-day school weeks are best for kids, but if you can prove as a local school board that the kids are still excelling, they're still progressing, and that you're saving money, you can continue to do it.
Gotcha.
But what it does is it puts the focus squarely on the kid and the kid's achievement. The child's achievement should be of utmost importance in the classroom.
That's great.
And so there's some tweaks we need to make probably to clarify some of that. Currently in the bill, statewide assessments are used as to calculate student achievement. There's some disagreement on is that the best calculation. Okay. And then the financial, it says significant financial savings, and we had some questions in committee as how is that defined?
Right.
So that's what's beautiful about the process that the founders created. I mean, you introduce a bill, you have a concept, and hopefully it's improving throughout the process.
That's right.
And we have some opportunities this week to improve it. You'll see some amendments coming out to do that, but we stand strongly behind it and think I was excited last week in committee that all the educators on the committee that asked questions on it talked about how 5-day school week was better for the student.
That's
Republicans
great.
And Democrats who were educators. So indeed, one of them ended up voting for it, and one of the Democrats. And so I was excited that people are taking this seriously. And I think that we'll achieve success in it.
So it sounds like to me that there are very reasonable exemptions for those school districts who currently are operating on 4-day weeks, and they found the success in it, and they are claiming that there has been a savings, and student outcome, student performance has been consistent and hasn't digressed or anything like that. There is very reasonable exemptions for those school districts to continue in the same type schedule. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. There is. Now, of the 520 plus school districts, about 92 of the school districts are currently on a 4-day school week. Okay. Some of those districts have experienced great success. Others not so much. So we want to make sure. In fact, I had a colleague tell me that one of his school districts called and said, "There's no way we can show student achievement," and we've got to have high expectations
Right.
for our kids. It's the child is the absolute focus, but it also is a national reputation issue for the state of Oklahoma. When you have political candidates that are running for statewide offices, and when you have a teachers union out there stating that we can't afford a school day,
Right.
5-day school week. Sorry, easier for me to say.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you have people insinuating that, it's a mark against Oklahoma
That's right.
nationally. And so when we're trying to recruit more businesses to get more revenue into the state to be able to provide more revenue to education, we run up against this. So if we can show both Oklahomans that the student is the central focus, and people who may be wanting to move here, invest here, that no, the 4-day school week is still about student achievement.
That's
we
right.
may be doing 4 days in this district, but look at what our kids are doing.
Wow.
Look at how capable they are. And look at how these teachers are improving their lives, improving their ability to learn and have new concepts, but also be great employees in the future.
That's right. Well, moving on to a different topic, I don't want to limit this conversation, but I suspect this is going to be a conversation that we'll probably have over the next few weeks as well. So this probably isn't just a limited conversation right now. Moving forward to what's going to be taking place this week, is there anything that you foresee happening this week that we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, let me go back for one second.
Okay.
One thing I failed to mention is the State Department of Education will be the arbiter of deciding, did this school district actually meet these 2 requirements? And so we're going to try to work with them in the coming days to make sure that it's something they can enforce. What's coming up? Constitutional carry will be coming up. I just don't know what day. Senate Bill 195 that I'm excited to be the author of will be coming up actually Monday, today. So we will be taking that up. It's a huge step for Oklahoma. It's what's known around the country as a trigger bill on abortion. So in 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that abortion was legal in the United States. We all believe in the pro-life movement in my caucus that was an erroneous finding, that they stretched the U.S. Constitution. You can't find that in the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
But we're respecters of the rule of law.
Right.
And 200 years of case law that talks about the Supreme Court being able to arbitrate whether or not an act of Congress or legislature is constitutional. So what we followed a model that 5 other states have already implemented, and counting us, 4 states are considering right now, where we put into law that if Roe v. Wade is either overturned in part or in whole, or if the states go together, or another way of amending the Constitution is implemented through the U.S. Constitution, if the U.S. Constitution is amended to protect unborn life, that all the laws that we have on the books regarding abortion would no longer be necessary, because you wouldn't need to regulate abortion if it no longer existed. So it'd pull those down, but it would reinforce an existing statute that's been on the books since 1910 in the state of Oklahoma that makes performing an abortion a felony, punishable by state imprisonment. And so that is still on the books, but it's unenforceable. It's inoperable, in another word, another way to put it, because of the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, not in just Roe v. Wade, but in Planned Parenthood versus Casey and other very bad decisions.
Right.
We're hopeful. We believe. We pray that that justice will be served and abortion will go away. And we're going to do everything we can in Oklahoma to defend unborn life. And this bill is very substantial. I'm excited that a number of states are doing it. Hopefully it sends a signal to the U.S. Supreme Court that we are serious about trying to overturn Roe v. Wade. There are a number of vehicles already in the pipeline that if the U.S. Supreme Court wished to take cert up on them, they could, and they could reverse Roe v. Wade, because a number of states, including Oklahoma, passed laws that either U.S. Supreme Court has refused to take up that could abolish Roe v. Wade, or just regulations that the Supreme Court has not taken up. So there's plenty of opportunity for the U.S. Supreme Court to rule on it. Thus far, they haven't taken it up. We're hopeful with recent changes that they're more favorable. and we're very watchful of what's going on around the country on this.
Wow. So this Senate Bill 195 sets the standard, in essence, for Oklahoma when and if Roe v. Wade is overturned, and actually would reinforce the law outlawing abortions in Oklahoma, and at the same time removing those restrictions that are currently in place. So it's more of a long-term thinking type bill. Is that kind of the
it
mindset?
assuages the legitimate concerns that some have that if Roe v. Wade is ever overturned, that we have a statute on the books,
Right.
again, since 1910, that's been amended through the years, that outlaws abortion.
Right.
But we also have, on the other hand, regulations on the abortion industry, which have saved lives, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge misnomer that some are perpetrating.
And that's something that health department actually tracks, correct? And anybody can go and look at the actual data on that, correct?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Since 2010, 22% reduction each year, or 22% reduction since 2010 on abortions in Oklahoma,
Wow.
and a 47% reduction in abortion performed with women who are under the age of 20. So our regulations are making a difference.
That's right.
What we don't want, though, is we're extremely hopeful and extremely prayerful that the U.S. Supreme Court will do the right thing. There's been some really terrible decisions they made in the past that they've overturned, and we're hopeful that they will still. But if you have both the regulations on the books regulating abortion and the felony, you could have some confusion on how to implement it. And so we're proactively saying once this happens, and we're believing that it will happen,
Right.
that the regulations go away and we're able to enforce the law of the land in the state of Oklahoma, which is already on the books,
Right.
of abortion being a felony.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, with this week being deadline week, this is the committee deadline week, meaning that any bill that has been produced in the Senate needs to be heard in committee by this week. There's still a few bills that have not been heard. One is the Senate Bill 1, the Loft bill, and some other ones that give more government accountability. Can you kind of speak to those of where we're at in that process?
Yeah, thank you for that. The Loft bill, Senate Bill 1, was the first bill filed that it will be run this week in committee.
Okay.
It provides for a legislative office of fiscal transparency, so we can make better budget decisions. We can hold agencies more accountable, and we can also hold ourselves accountable when we pass a program.
Right.
We can know if it's effective or not,
Great.
and put resources where we need to. I've allowed other people to run their bills first, and then I'm running most of mine this week.
Great. Okay.
The other ones that I'm running this week deal with giving the governor more authority to hire and fire agency directors. We've been having extremely fruitful discussions with the governor, with the Speaker of the House, and I think that we are very close to all being on the exact same page, and I think you'll see that come to fruition this week.
That is great. Okay. Well, beyond these main topics, is there anything else you wanted to add that we might look forward to this week?
Well, I think, the excitement of the legislative calendar is you never know what's going to happen.
That's right.
We get groups of constituents, groups come up here. There are bills that may or may not be on your radar or something to watch, and then it pops up.
Right.
So I think it will be another exciting week in the legislature, productive week.
Mm-hmm.
Deadline weeks are always long hours, and always surprises and disappointments.
Mm-hmm.
The House has been working extremely hard as well, and their deadline weeks this week too. So what that means simply for people who are just wanting to know more about the process is the first 4 weeks of session, bills that originate in the Senate must get out of Senate committee or they're no longer viable. Bills that originate in the House must get out of House committee or they're no longer viable. And then the next series of deadlines, what we'll be going into over the next few weeks, will be those bills that came out of Senate bills that originated in the Senate will have to get off the Senate floor to be viable. Same is true with the House. So there's a method to the madness.
Gotcha. Well, we're about out of time here, but before we sign off, do you have anything, any last words you wanted to give a shout out to?
Pay attention to our website. We're looking for qualified people who want to serve their state in the capacity of serving on a board that the pro tem has appointments to. The pro tem governor and speaker have a number of appointments across state government. We can't simply know enough people to be able to point to those things. So please look at the website and keep recommendations coming. I've been pleased to get recommendations, but I need more.
That's great.
And just appreciate your time.
Love it. That's something that if somebody is in Oklahoma and they want to be involved in the legislative process and being a part of what's happening, that's a way that they can get directly involved. It's just being on one of those boards and being appointed. So
hey, I know we're about to go off there, but I'm going to use my prerogative.
Yeah.
One of the things that didn't talk about was the Board of Equalization that met last week.
Yeah.
Certified $575 million additional over what we had last year. Now, there's a number of ongoing obligations that will eat at that. We share a desire to try to save some money with the governor and the House. But there's been some media stories about, the House passed the teacher pay raise and the Senate is focused on classroom funding. That is true, but they're not mutually exclusive.
Right.
And so we're trying to, we applaud the efforts of the House. And indeed, when the Speaker asked me to author the $1,200 teacher pay raise, I proudly put my name on that. But we're also cognizant that we need to get some money into the classroom. So I think sometimes there's an effort, either intentional or unintentional, to pit the House versus the Senate.
Right.
We've never been closer to the same page on a number of issues, and I applaud their efforts, and we were in communication with them all the time. We made a huge effort over the last 2 years to get more money into teacher pay. That was a desperate need. We delivered big time last session, nearly $500 million to teacher pay, and we're cognizant that teachers still need more pay to get to number one in the region. We applaud the governor's efforts, the speaker's efforts on that. But we're also, and I'm not saying that they're not, but we're also cognizant of classroom funding. Definitely. And that's an ongoing discussion that as we work through the process, we can balance those needs and get to an agreement. And I'm excited about the discussions that are ongoing.
Love it. Awesome. Senator, thank you for sharing that as well. Because that's a very important thing that we can't overlook is that BOE meeting and just the budgeting process is something that we definitely take time to update people on each week. Well, with that, and unless you have something else to add, guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. You can view any of our videos, our podcasts, or graphics, or articles. Anything that we produce from the Pro Tem Media team is found at protem.oksenate.gov. On there, speaking of budgets, is a weekly video podcast we do with the Appropriations Chair, Senator Thompson, and he actually walks us through what the BOE met, what the certified number was, and actually where the starting point is for our budgeting process. So take a look at that. That's also available on our Oklahoma Senate Republicans Facebook page. So I guess with that, you can also email us anytime if you want a question that you'd like Senator Treat to answer directly. You can email us at ondeck@oksenate.gov. That will go to us directly here at the podcast with Senator Treat, and he can talk about that here on the show. So
yeah, I really encourage people to watch Senator Thompson's podcast. They're very illustrative, very informing, and I think you'll understand the budget much better if you watch those. You do a great job on those.
And just in pure Senator Thompson style with a whiteboard right behind him. So it's just classic. So, well, guys, thank you again for joining us, and we'll be back next week updating everybody on all the events here at the Capitol and in the Senate and the House. So hopefully you can join us then. All right, Senator Treat, anything else?
Until next time.
All right, we'll see y'all soon. Bye, guys.